morning, everyone. Good evening. Oops. Trungpa Rinpoche always said good morning, so since this is a talk devoted to him, okay, we'll say good morning, because the sun is always rising, the great eastern sun. It's always 10 o'clock. Tonight we will be discussing the 4 reminders as taught by Trungpa Rinpoche in 1974. My name is Rochelle Weithorn. Welcome to New York Buddha Dharma. This is a center that's dedicated to the teachings and instruction of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was a Tibetan Buddhist meditation master, and we were fortunate enough to have him come to the United States in 1970, where he began teaching students and meditation. His teachings were based on the teachings of the Buddha, who lived 2,560 years ago. And he was born in Nepal and walked through India and gave teachings. And the teachings were passed on through his disciples and all the disciples afterwards until Trungpa Rinpoche received it in Tibet and brought it to the West. In 1974, Rinpoche at that point decided that maybe we were ready for to go further with our practice, some new teachings, and least that we get too comfortable in our practice and we start centralizing into ourself. And the Vijayadhara decided that we should start contemplation practice, and he gave us something called 4 reminders. This is a very typical practice that any Tibetan teacher would give you, and it's in all the texts, but the way he described it in 1974 was a little unusual, because at that time the Tibetan texts hadn't been translated yet for the 4 reminders, and so it just came from his heart. So what I'd like to do is just start with contemplating each reminder one at a time, and then we'll go into the talk. And you don't have to look at your handout, because I have made signs. Okay. Can you see it in the camera? Okay. So just relax and take good posture, good head and shoulders, and I will read the first reminder and then just contemplate. Joyful to have such a human birth, difficult to find, free and well-favored. But death is real, comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. Unalterable are the laws of karma. Cause and effect cannot be escaped. Samsara is an ocean of suffering, unendurable, unbearably intense. Okay, now I'd like to start again, and everyone chant together. Ready? Joyful to have such a human birth, difficult to find, free and well-favored. Rinpoche didn't really give much teaching on the four reminders. I looked through books and transcripts and I couldn't really find anything. So I called Sri Larry Mermelstein in Halifax, who's the head of the translation committee, and I asked him about it, and he said he really didn't give much teachings on the four reminders. So what I did instead was go to the glorious Trungpa Rinpoche. In his book, Vivid Awareness, he gives teachings. He doesn't give teachings, but he offers a commentary on the teachings that he and Trungpa Rinpoche received in Tibet before they left Tibet when the Chinese invaded. Khenpo Gongshar was a crazy wisdom meditation master, sort of anati teacher, and he gave teachings to both Trungpa Rinpoche and Trungpa Rinpoche at the same time in Tibet. And this book, Vivid Awareness, is the teachings that Khenpo Gongshar gave them at that time, and part of those teachings were on the four reminders. So I'd like to go over Trungpa Rinpoche's commentary on the first reminder. He Khenpo Gongshar had a great effect on Trungpa Rinpoche's teaching style. Up until then, he was very young in Tibet, and he had been taught in a very classical way. But when he met Khenpo Gongshar, his teaching style definitely changed. Okay, here's the commentary of Trungpa Rinpoche, who's a great Tibetan teacher, one of the greatest teachers living today. This is his a commentary on the four reminders, which he calls the four thoughts that turn the mind. This is Trungpa Rinpoche. People often say they like the Dharma, which is the teachings of the Buddha, but they are unable to practice meditation. We need to realize that practice is something we cannot do without. We need to think about the reasons why Dharma is indispensable. If we think about the reasons, faith will come. And then we will naturally become diligent in our meditation. This is why we contemplate the nature of things and the four thoughts that turn the mind. What does that mean, contemplation or turning the mind? Some people, like Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, if you want to be efficient in the things that you do, the night before you go to sleep, make a list of the things you have to get done the next day. And so we could write the top of the list, let's say if we're turning our mind towards the Dharma, we might say practice 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. That could be on the list. Anyway, once I asked Khenpo Tsultrim Gyamtso Rinpoche, also a great yogi and meditation teacher, I was having a problem working with my practice at the time, and I said, what should I do? And he said, diligence, enjoying virtue. Diligence, enjoying virtue. And I wrote it down on a little piece of paper, and I put it up on the mirror by my sink. So every day I would read that for years and years, and I finally figured out what he meant. Anyway, I'll let you think about that. Okay, now here's Trungpa Rinpoche. This was his introduction, but he says about the first reminder, the first thought that turns the mind into is the contemplation of this precious human birth, this precious human body, so difficult to find. Don't waste it. But this is not the only reason. We have encountered these instructions, which is very rare. They came to us from Tibet. Khenpo Gangshar was a crazy wisdom teacher who lived in a remote place in Tibet. What are the chances that we should receive them here in America? And not only did we receive them, they were translated into English so we could understand them. And not only that, when we heard them, we thought, these are important. If I study them and put them into practice, they will help me. What incredible good fortune. This good fortune to encounter the Dharma and these particular instructions is the precious human birth, so difficult to find. We have encountered the Dharma, which is so hard to find. When we encountered it, we need to be able to have faith and devotion, and we have been able to do that. Now that we have such good fortune, we must not let it go to waste. We need to practice in this human life. Okay. So now, the second contemplation. But death is real, comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. Okay, so this is what Trungpa Rinpoche says about the second thought that turns the mind. The second thought that turns the mind is the contemplation of death and impermanence. Sometimes we think of this as being depressing. It is an unhappy and unpleasant topic. But this weariness does not hurt us in any way. It helps us. As the Buddha said, at first, it is the condition that encourages us towards the Dharma. In the middle, it is the rod that spurs us to diligence. In the end, it is the companion of the results. At first, when we have not thought about impermanence during happy times, we may get distracted by our pleasure. But our happiness always changes at the end. Its nature isn't permanent. If we do not know this and get distracted, in the future, when it changes, it will be as if there is nothing we can do, and we will be badly off. If we start thinking of impermanence now, we will be prepared. This will encourage us to practice Dharma. We will think, I must practice, I must not forget the Dharma. Once we are motivated to the Dharma, how does contemplating impermanence help? This encourages us not to be lazy. Then in the end, meditating on impermanence is the companion for attaining results. So diligence, enjoying virtue. You're diligent and you're enjoying the virtuous action of practicing the Dharma. Now here's a quote from Milarepa. First I went to the mountains out of fear of death, but now I've seized the stronghold of deathlessness beyond fear. Even a small effort in practice will have good result. In the 1970s, or may have been the early 80s, or 1970s, His Holiness, the King of Dharma, the glorious Gyalwang Karmapa, was traveling here in the United States at the invitation of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And he was invited to a congressional luncheon. And one of the congressmen asked him, Your Holiness, if you could just describe Buddhism in one sentence, what would it be? And he said, everything changes. Suzuki Roshi, who was a great meditation master, was also asked the same question, and he said, everything changes, exactly the same thing. Our desire for things to stay the same creates an enormous amount of suffering. Why? Because when things change, we can't accept it. Then we either blame ourselves or others for this change. In reality, we really have very little control over what happens to us, since the nature of reality is that things change. Change happens. In a way, this is good, because if things were not fluid, we would live in a frozen world, and we could never work with ourselves. We would be doomed to remain in our current situation forever. On April 4th, 1987, our dear, wonderful, amazing, bigger-than-life teacher passed from this world. I remember very clearly, we heard that he was ill. He was in Halifax. People were practicing at all the Dharma Dhatus. Those were our centers around the world. I was in New York. We were practicing. And I don't know, I can't say we, but I can speak personally for myself. I just assumed that everything would go well, that he would get better, and then we would continue on our merry way with our wonderful teacher to guide us forever. But unfortunately for us, that didn't happen, because he died. And we couldn't believe it. We just could not believe, even though the Karmapa died in 1981, still, it was horrible, but he wasn't our personal teacher. You know, we loved him, we adored him, he was amazing. He was the head of the Karma Kagyu lineage. It was incredible, but he wasn't our personal teacher. Our personal teacher was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche died. Well, what happened next was really interesting, because he was such a generous, wonderful teacher, he had trained us really well. He trained us in meditation. He trained us in the Dharma. He trained us in further practices. He gave everything to us. And so, we were very well prepared. We didn't know it, but we were. And when things happened to us in our life, all the things that he told us that was just so far away just started coming into the present moment for us. And we were very lucky. Once I met this woman who was a student of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. His picture is up there. She was a close disciple of his. Khyentse Rinpoche was in New York, and I was in the household where he was staying, and she had a scarf around her neck, and I guess she had brain cancer. And she said to me, the only thing that I can rely on right now is what I've practiced, because right now I can't do much practice because I'm sick. So the only thing I have to rely on is what I've already done. I mean, I assume that was good news for her, because if she was a student of Khyentse Rinpoche, she was in good shape. Okay, so now number 3. Okay, ready? Unalterable are the laws of karma. Cause and effect cannot be escaped. Trungpa Rinpoche. The third thought that turns the mind is the contemplation on karma. We often think we have no control over our karma, but it is not like that. Actually, karma gives us control. We all want to be happy, but wonder if it is possible. It is possible if we perform the cause of happiness, virtuous actions. We will perform the happiness that results from them. Similarly, if we give up the cause of suffering, which is non-virtuous actions, we will experience happiness that results from them. If we properly take up virtue and give up wrongdoing, we can be happy and free of suffering. And here, one of the commentaries I read on a translation of this fourth karma, the third karma was that even sovereigns pass away. No matter what we have in this life, we cannot pay someone to practice for us. If I could have paid someone to practice for me, I would have paid them. I definitely would have paid. But whether we're a king, a queen, or a pauper, we have to do the job by ourselves. Now, if we have money, we could go and retreat. It might be a little more comfortable. But even if we don't have money, we could just sit in our house, make a little space in our tiny little apartment or wherever we live, and just sit and practice the Dharma. So it's very important that we know that we have to each individually practice for ourselves. And we have the support of a spiritual friend, of the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha, the community that practice together, our Sangha brothers and sisters. And that's very important, and that's why they're referred to as the 3 jewels. Once the Karmapa I read or I heard, I think it was Jangmo Khantrul that told the story of he was with the 16 Karmapa in his room in Rumtek in India, where he had his monastery. And suddenly in the middle of the night he woke up and he asked Jangmo Khantrul to get the monks, the attendants, and to put up a shrine, because he was going to do a Sukhavati ceremony. That's a ceremony for the dead. So the attendants come in, they set up the shrine, the Karmapa does a practice of a poa practice where he releases when someone has died, and he releases their energy so that they can go to the Pure Land. And then he says, okay, you can take the shrine away, and he went back to sleep. Next day, there's a knock on the door, the monastery, and the monks come running. Someone from Bhutan had come to say that the king of Bhutan had died in the middle of the night, and he wanted the Karmapa to perform a Sukhavati ceremony for the dead. And the Karmapa said, already done. And later on, he told Jamukantral that when he was sleeping in the middle of the night, the king of Bhutan came to him, because the king of Bhutan was his student. And the Karmapa said, anyone at all, who has faith in him, who asks him, who comes to him when they die, he will release their energy and go to send them to the pure realm or whatever. And so I was like, that's really good to know, because I know that when I die, I'm just going to ask him for help right away. Now we have the 17th Karmapa. But I mean, that was really good news, because who knows? Anyway. But even the king of Dharma, the 16th Karmapa, did die. And to us, he was a sovereign. He was just amazing, and he died. He died in Chicago in 1981. We were at the 1981 seminary in Lake Louise, Canada, 350 people practicing and studying. And then Trungpa Rinpoche made the announcement in the shrine room that the Karmapa had passed away. And we were just shocked. We couldn't believe it. Anyway, that's samsara. Let's see what's next. Okay, the fourth contemplation. Okay, samsara is an ocean of suffering, unendurable, unbearably intense. Trungpa Rinpoche. The fourth thought that turns the mind is meditation on the defects of samsara. We humans experience the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death. We encounter difficulties and obstacles. Ordinary people just think they're having bad luck, a hard luck day, hard luck life. And they are the only ones, and they think they're the only ones that are having these problems. But that is not how it is. Birth, old age, sickness, and death, and all kinds of problems are characteristics of samsara. Everyone experiences them. That is why we need to practice the Dharma. By practicing the Dharma, we can abandon the afflictions. By abandoning the afflictions, we can give up misdeeds and non-virtue, which will bring us freedom from suffering. To free ourselves from samsara, we need to practice the genuine Dharma. And to do that, we primarily need to practice meditation or mindfulness practice. That is why we meditate on the defects of samsara. These common preliminaries allow us to enter the Dharma even if we have been unable to before. The Vijayadhara, to quote him, said, "Without meditation, there is no way in and there is no way out." I thought of the story today that I thought I might share with you. About 20 years ago, I got a phone call from this young lady. I think she was a teenager at the time. The daughter of one of my friends. And she asked if she could borrow my khaki clothes because she was going up to the Shambhala Mountain Meditation Center up in Rocky Mountain in Colorado to do a program where she would need khaki clothes. And, I really did not want to lend her my clothes. I had a beautiful field uniform, that I got in the military store, and I had sewn on these gorgeous buttons, especially that we use in our Dharma Dhatus, Vajra Dhatu, Shambhala, whatever. I was like, there's no way I want to lend her these clothes, but she was a teenager and she was going to a program like Sun Camp, and I was like, how can I say no to her? So she came and picked up my whole shopping bag of all my khaki clothes. A lot of it, I bought at Bergdorf's, and I was very annoyed. In any case, a couple of months later, the shopping bag arrives. And, the clothes look a little shoddy, but the field jacket that I had spent hours sewing these gorgeous buttons on, the right sleeve was like all crumped together with stitching of first brown thread and then like khaki thread on this thing. And I was like horrified. I don't believe anything was said. Maybe she might have said something like, oh, sorry, but I tried my best to stitch it up. And for 20 years, I never put that jacket on again because I wouldn't wear, how was I going to wear that jacket with the stitching? And I was like so angry, and I like sent a lot of negative vibrations out her way, her mother's way, and my way. It was like a triangle of all the negativity that was going around in my head. And I would take the jacket out, and I was like, maybe I'll put a patch on it, but I would always put it back in the closet. And I even tried to give it to my friend's son, who is now going to Sun Camp, and he didn't want it. Anyway, last October, like a couple of weeks ago, Tai Situ Rinpoche was coming to New York, and he was going to be up in Woodstock at the Karmapa's Monastery in Woodstock, KTD, and then also, that was a Saturday, and then Sunday, he was going to be in Red Hook at Bardo Tulku Rinpoche's monastery, and I was thinking, I would like to put on my khaki uniform and represent the Vidyadhara, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, may he rest in peace. I would like to represent him, and like do a nice bow to Tai Situ Rinpoche, who we haven't seen in 17 years. And that's the way it would have been done had he been invited to one of our land centers. We would have had our full uniforms on. It would have been beautiful. So I was like, okay, but what about that jacket? So I took the jacket out of the closet, and like 20 years later, this is what practice does for you. I looked at the sleeve, and I'm thinking, what is this really, what really is the problem? So I took a magnifying glass, and I'm like looking at it, and I was like, I wonder what the damage really is. So I took a stitch ripper, and I started taking out all the thread. And when I did that, it was like, it wasn't that bad. It was just like a hole, So then I was like, I'm going to take this jacket downstairs to the tailor. There's a tailor shop right next to me, on my block in Manhattan, And I go down there, and I said to him, can you, patch this up so it looks nice? And he looks at it, and he says, okay, come back next week. And I said, no, I need it today, because tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., I'm going up to Woodstock, and I need the jacket. And he's like, $15. So I gave him $15. He said, come back at 4:30. I come back, and when I looked at the jacket hanging on the hanger, I couldn't even tell that there had ever been anything wrong, any rip. It was like so slight. He did such a beautiful job. And I was like, you're a genius. But when I was like stunned. But when I came home, I thought, this is samsara. For 20 years, I was upset about a problem that was solved in minutes, in seconds, so easily. Because, I never bothered to really explore the problem fully. And I thought to myself, this is it. This says it all about how people are in this world. If they have like a slight little problem in their life, they make it into such a big deal that they're ready to jump out the window because of it, when with a slight adjustment, it can just be resolved. Anyway, that's my rant for today. But Okay, but I'm going to close with Leonard Cohen. I don't know about all of you, but I've been so depressed all week. First we had the election, and then poor Lenny dies. I mean, God, how horrible could, like, it was just horrible. So I read on the internet, on Facebook, one of his friends posted something. He said, this is from Leonard Cohen's Dharma friend, because Leonard Cohen was a practicing Buddhist. I'm sharing this because his music and words inspired so many of us. He was a legend, but he was really a beautiful person too. My Dharma brother. He once told me that during his stay in India, after his years at our Zen monastery, something clicked and he found a peace inside that never left him. It was so inspiring to see this great, tortured artist, light-hearted and at peace with himself in his last years. This stuff works, he told me. At last, he said, the last time I saw him, he was like, this stuff works. Somehow, Leonard said, somehow everything I've been doing all these years comes down to the work I did with Roshi, his teacher. And his friend said, our hearts break. He was the real deal. Leonard Cohen. So, if anyone has any questions or any comments. Anything you'd like to share, any stories?
So just speak into this? Okay. Well, I mean, it's really kind of concerning Leonard Cohen. But I was took a walk last night just to sort of look at the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's supposed to be big and bright. And
the full, beautiful
full
moon.
moon. And so I was walking my dog, and I live in Chelsea, and I walked by the Chelsea Hotel. I looked from across the street, and I saw these candles and things, and basically there's like shrine to Leonard Cohen. So there's some of his quotes and song verses and pictures of him, and I knew that he was a monk and loved his music. And I was Facebooking with a friend, and he posted something about Leonard Cohen. He had said he was really mean to Janis Joplin. Yeah.
Leonard Cohen?
Yeah. I didn't guess that. Oh, he was really mean. He was really mean to Janis Joplin. Like something had happened, and they were in the Chelsea Hotel, and I guess that would have been in the '60s, right?
Yeah.
And who hasn't been mean to somebody at a time or another? And I was just thinking how luckily we get to practice the Dharma, and he became a monk, I guess, after that. And, you said he was a really nice man, right? So just the juxtaposition of that.
Yeah, because things change.
Because things change, right?
Exactly.
That's it.
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
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 Thanks for your talk, Rochelle. It was great to hear those teachings on the Four Reminders as well. So thanks for sharing those. Okay. What I was thinking about just now was your last story and about how you held on to this little thing for so long and it was solvable so quickly. I mean, it's not apples and apples, obviously, but I'm thinking, about all the energy that's out there right now, the fear, the anxiety, the anger, about the election results, and it's obviously not a small thing about what's going on in the world right now, or in this country specifically. But what occurred to me is how people are just weaving storylines that are based on stated intentions but haven't occurred yet, and how the energy of so many people is just despairing and just so dark. And it's hard to try to, practice, sit through all that and maintain equanimity, because these are things that are important and scary. But, and I'm not saying I have any solution to that, but it's just something that came to my mind. How we may be, I don't know, creating such a horror, and like you said, everything changes, and maybe doesn't allow for the possibility of something unexpected to happen.
Sasha, what's your quote about the crack? Can you wait for the mic? Wait for the mic. Finally, Sasha, you get your...
Yeah. One of Leonard Cohen's songs is called Anthem.
Repeat.
What?
Repeat.
Okay. One of Leonard Cohen's songs is called Anthem. And if I remember correctly, it's let the bell ring. It says, if the bell still rings and there's a crack in it, that's how the light comes in.
Right, that's
and
how the
then
light
he
comes
said,
in.
That everybody has a crack in it. And
Yeah.
so we all could let the light come in.
Yeah, and so in what you were saying, that if we make this election into a solid thing, then the light, we won't be able to see the cracks with the light coming in. And I think it's really important to know that, to remember now especially, that everyone's basic nature is basic goodness. We all have Buddha nature, we all have basic goodness, and all people go home to their families. They're loving, kind, and caring for the people they care about. And so I think if we can extend that out to others, and also make aspiration prayers that people who are in power will then extend that out to us. I think that would be a great practice to do. Rather than sending out negativity, we could send out light.
I was sent a New Yorker cartoon yesterday. It showed a group much like this one sitting in meditation posture, and the leader sitting in the position you are, but on the floor on the cushion, was saying to them, and now send out loving vibrations to all the people in the world who share the same political, economic, and religious beliefs that you do.
Perfect.
You know what, when it comes to the new album is called? You Wanted It Darker. I find it extremely interesting, actually. Leonard Cohen's last album is called You Wanted It Darker. And or it's something like that. Does anyone know the exact? Anyway, it has to do with
That's close. I was just listening to it today.
Right, and he talks about how he's actually preparing his life. At this song in it is called, at the very end, he says, I'm leaving the table, I'm leaving the game. And that's like his last song he ever wrote. What I find interesting is that he's like an angel, and I feel like the devil has risen. And like you're talking about, we have the 4 reminders. He is one of our reminders. And you know, it's so sad, but he gave us so much to work with here.
Did you want to say something about the new album?
No, thank you.
Nothing?
Thank you.
Well, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was a perfect example of generosity, because when he came here, he was raised in a monastery where he was like the king of Dharma, you know, the 11th reincarnation of this great teacher. And then he came here, and we were like a bunch of hippies. We would lie on the shrine room, point our feet at him, and he just kind of like totally appreciated who we were or who we were going to become. And if he didn't extend that generosity and loving kindness to us, and he gave us everything he had, everything, if he didn't do that, then where would we be today? But he had confidence. He had a certain confidence that he always used to say, you could do it, you could do it. Whenever he had a problem, he always said, well, you could do it. I was like, oh, really? I don't think so. He said, you could do it. That was his thing, because he really had real faith in us. And he was the only Tibetan teacher I ever met that didn't travel with a whole entourage of Tibetans. He was just him and his wife, Lady Diana, and his Western students. Because he really truly believed that anyone could attain enlightenment in this very lifetime. And he trained us the way he was trained in Tibet, like a tulku. He never held back, because he totally had faith that we could do it. And I think as students of his and people who have read his books and care about him, we could do the same thing. When we meet people and we hear about people, we could also empower them. And I know that they also could wake up. It's just not an exclusive club, like John said. People that just have the same views that we have. Because in reality, all of those views, when you really get down to it, no one has the same views. Everyone's coming from a different place. We have to honor, it's good to honor people wherever they are, in their practice, in their life, and who they are on this planet. And then by doing so, we're really creating an environment for the Dharma to flourish. Anyone else? Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. You're welcome. Thank you to... What? At the end. Okay, we'll dedicate the merit.
Oh, you're going to dedicate the merit, then an announcement.
You have an announcement? Okay. We dedicate the merit for the benefit of ourselves and all sentient beings. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you.
Just a couple of announcements.